Hello, everyone. Welcome to SME Growth Lab Africa. This is a digital accelerator program for African SMEs, and this YouTube channel is dedicated to providing insights and best practices to help African entrepreneurs grow their businesses. Today's lesson, titled Understanding Conflict of Interest, Essential Legal Insights for Entrepreneurs. This falls under the legal counseling module. We're happy to bring this lesson to you. In today's lesson, we will give a brief introduction to conflict of interest, its definition, why conflict of interest is important as a business owner, and the objective of conflict of interest. We'll also look at some common examples of conflicts of interest in business, because we believe that when there are examples brought to the table, they are more relatable, and that really fosters, understanding. We'll also look at some legal implications and risk. For example, if you are caught in businesses that are conflicting with one another, it could lead to, a legal problem, right? And lastly, we will also talk about managing and mitigating conflict of interest, and we'll give a few minutes for questions and answers. So firstly, what is conflict of interest? This occurs when an individual's personal interest could potentially influence their professional actions or decisions. So whether you are a business owner or you're someone who is part of an organization, of course, there are times when you have to make decisions that aligns with the organization you work for or aligns with the goals and objectives of your own business. Now, those decisions, when they are influenced by your own perceptions, your own personal biases, or your own personal interests, then a conflict of interest occurs in that scenario. Why is conflict of interest important? Why should you, as a business owner, understand what conflict of interest means? Now, recognizing and managing conflict of interest is crucial to maintain trust and transparency and also integrity in business. You want to be someone who is known for being trustworthy, someone who is known for having integrity, and someone who is known for maintaining trust in different business settings, organizational settings, right? So it's important to separate your own personal interests and thoughts or personal opinions or personal perspectives from what is truly at hand. When you're making business decisions, it should not be based on your own thoughts or your own interest. It should be based on what aligns with your business or the organization that you work for. Now, what is the objective of conflict of interest? Why are we talking about it today? Because this provides entrepreneurs with the knowledge to identify and address conflicts of interest in their business operations. And maybe you are someone who already understands the objective of conflict of interest. But when you're in a business and you have employees and you expect that their decisions that they make should align with your goals and objectives, you as a person should be able to see when there's a conflict of interest involved. Okay? And conflict of interest can manifest in various ways within a business. And oftentimes, this compromises decision making and integrity, because not being able to separate your own personal thoughts or your own personal perception or biases from a decision that needs to be made, then it would start to conflict when you're expecting someone to make a decision that benefits the organization or benefits the business, your business, and then they're making decisions that are influenced by what they think or what they prefer. Then things are not aligning. Okay, now understanding these common scenarios is very important for entrepreneurs. Why? Because you want to maintain transparency and ethical standards. You want to have a standardized way of working, and they say that you have to lead by example. So as a business owner, you have to understand conflict of interest and be able to pass that down to your employees. So let's look at some typical examples of conflict of interest that can arise in a business setting. Now, some Common examples of conflict of interest in business. Number one, self-dealing. Now, this occurs when an entrepreneur makes decisions that serve their own personal interest rather than the best interest of the company. Like I said in the previous slide, when you find yourself in a decision-making environment, whatever decision you're making as a member of the organization or as a business owner, it has to be in the best interest of the company. If it's not in the best interest of the company, then you're letting your personal interest determine how that decision will be made. And that's an example of conflict of interest. Okay? For example, an entrepreneur might steer a contract towards a business they own, even if it's not the best option for the company, right? So you get a contract and, rather than ensuring that that contract is given to someone or given to a contractor who fairly qualifies for that job, but then when you divert that contract to your own business or a business of somebody else, right, then it's seen as self-dealing. And really, this can undermine trust and lead to serious legal consequences when you get caught. The second example is family and friend bias. So this type of conflict arises when an entrepreneur favors families or friends in business-related decisions, such as hiring or awarding contracts. This one is very, very common because, people often say that when you are in an opportunity to help other people, you should help them, help your family, help your friends. While that is correct, it needs to be based on, qualifications and merits. If someone qualifies fully for an opportunity, then they should be given that opportunity. An opportunity should not be given to somebody just because they're merely your friend or because they're merely your family. And that in itself is a conflict of interest. So, why it might feel like it's harmless or you're just trying to help people that this is a bias. And it can lead to accusations of nepotism or favoritism, potentially harming the business's reputation and effectiveness. So rather than hire people that are qualified based on experience and educational upbringing, you're giving opportunities to people because they're your family or they're your friend. So that can really harm a business's reputation when such conflict of interest is allowed. Lastly, outside employment. So this conflict occurs when an entrepreneur holds another job or business interest that competes with or distracts from their primary business responsibilities. This is another very common one where, people say they have multiple jobs, they're doing 2 jobs, working on multiple shifts. Again, while this looks like it's harmless, but when the 2 companies you're working for are competitors, right? For example, the fintech industry. You're working with one fintech industry remotely, and you're working with another fintech industry, another fintech company in a hybrid setting, right? As long as they're in the same industry and they offer similar products, they are literally competitors, right? And you, who is doing these multiple jobs, this is a conflict of interest, and it's called outside employment. Okay, so such conflicts can divide your attention. It can create an environment where you're sharing company secrets between both companies. It can also create competing loyalties and possibly result in the entrepreneur prioritizing the other employment over the business, right? So as an entrepreneur, you have your own business and then you're working full-time or remotely with another company. Again, it might feel like it's harmless, but it's a conflict of interest, okay? Because your performance as an employee of that company and your performance as a business owner will really be affected, and it will also affect your business's growth as well. So these examples are some really common examples that many of us listening today are aware, but sometimes we feel like it's okay to do them. No, it's not okay to do them, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you would experience some legal consequences when this conflict of interest are being known. So as an entrepreneur who wants to build a sustainable and a successful business in Africa, you need to ensure that you are positioning yourself as someone who is trustworthy, who has integrity. You're not just making decisions because you can, or you're making decisions that favors a set of people that you know. Rather, you're making decisions that aligns with your own business or aligns with the organizations that you're working for. You don't want to put yourself in a situation that undermines your integrity, right? Because as an entrepreneur, integrity is very important, and ethical standards as well, because you're dealing with customers and consumers and contractors and vendors, suppliers. You're dealing with multiple stakeholders, right? And you want that trust factor to be very prevalent in your business. So understanding these very common examples and ensuring that you're not participating or you're not indulging in these common conflict of interest is actually the right way to go. Now we've talked about some common examples of conflict of interest. In this slide, we're going to look at some legal implications and risk. So this is like, okay, the repercussion of a conflict of interest. Okay, so the first one is breach of fiduciary duty. Now, a fiduciary duty requires entrepreneurs to act in the best interest of their business. So when conflict of interest lead to decisions that prioritize personal gain over the company's well-being, then this duty is breached. So as an entrepreneur, you're responsible for your business and also responsible for your employees. When you're making decisions that prioritizes your own personal gain, why? Because you're the founder of the organization, or you're the chief executive officer of the organization, and you're making decisions that prioritizes your own personal interests, then that duty of taking care of your company and ensuring that your company's well-being is prioritized, that duty is breached. And such actions can result in legal consequences, including lawsuits from stakeholders who feel the business has been harmed. So stakeholders like your employees, your investors, your suppliers, right? When decisions are being made that diminishes the company's well-being and prioritizes your own personal gain, the long and short story is that you could get sued. Okay, that's one legal implication and risk. The second one is reputational damage. So conflict of interest, if not properly managed, can erode trust among employees, customers, investors, and other stakeholders. And that's like the long and short of this example, is that your reputation as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a founder can be harmed, because when you start a company and you're not prioritizing trust among your employees, customers, investors, and other stakeholders, and something happens to that company and it crashes, or the company filed for bankruptcy, when you want to open another company again, people within that entrepreneurship ecosystem would already know who you are. Your reputation would already be dented. They would know that this is the kind of person you are. You're someone who your employees don't trust. Your customers don't trust. Your stakeholders, your investors, your previous investors don't trust you. And that news like that will travel far, right? So this loss of trust can damage the business's reputation, making it very difficult for you to attract new clients, retain talent, or even secure future investments, right? And at the end of the day, this affects your company's long-term success. So as an entrepreneur, you need to ensure that trust is very, very important, because your reputation is on the line, right? If you're a founder, you're trying to raise funds to grow your business, some questions that investors will ask you can really put your reputation on the spot. They want to know who you are as a person, your values, your principles. So if you're not prioritizing conflict of interest, if you're not making sure that you're being careful in that area, it could affect your reputation. And lastly, legal penalties. Now, engaging or failing to disclose conflict of interest can result in significant legal penalties. And this includes, fines, lawsuits. The government can even take regulatory actions against you, the founder, and other members of your organizations. And these penalties can be financially damaging and may also result in increased scrutiny from regulators and the public. So if there are things that you need to disclose while running your business, especially when you know that you are reporting to multiple stakeholders, and being really open about the things that you have, your business interest or your other investments that could pose as a conflict of interest. If you don't disclose them and they are discovered later, you could get serious legal penalties. So in the previous slides, we looked at some common examples of conflict of interest. We've also looked at implications and risk of conflict of interest. Now, let's talk about how you can manage and mitigate conflict of interest, right? Enough of the bad stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff. Now, the first way you can mitigate conflict of interest is disclosure, like full-on disclosure, right? This first step is it involves managing conflict of interest with transparency. Always disclose any potential conflict to the relevant parties within the business. So maybe your co-founder or your CTO, your chief technical officer, or your investors, right? Disclose what you need to disclose, and make sure that even your board members are fully on board and aligned. What this allows is, it allows your business to address any foreseen issue before it even happens, before it escalates, and all parties are aware of potential biases. Now, the second way to mitigate and manage conflict of interest is establishing clear policies. So this means that you're preventing conflict of interest using clear policies that outlines acceptable behavior and procedures for addressing conflicts. So these policies, they should be communicated to all employees and stakeholders, ensuring that everyone understands the standards and the consequences of violating them. So you have clear policies that highlight why people should not even engage in conflict of interest, right? At least people will know beforehand that, oh, okay, what's the policy on conflict of interest? This is a policy. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to say this to the public and things like that, so that everyone is aware of the consequences when those policies are violated. Number 3, independent decision making. So when conflict of interest arise, involving third parties or independent boards in the decision making process can help maintain objectivity. So this means is that you're bringing several stakeholders to the table to decide on something, and that way everyone is being objective. You're not just you as a business owner, you're not just the one making the sole decision. Now you're involving other people in, and this approach actually ensures decisions are made in the best interest of the business, free from personal biases or conflicting interests. Lastly, regular training. This is one of the most important, because some people engage in conflict of interest and they don't even know that they're engaging in conflict of interest. So by providing regular training and identifying and managing conflict of interest, that way you're fostering an ethical business environment. So this means that you're educating employees and stakeholders about what constitutes a conflict of interest, how to disclose it, and the steps to take to manage it effectively. Trainings like this would obviously help create a culture of integrity and accountability within the organization. So let's summarize what we've talked about. In this presentation, we explored the concept of conflict of interest, the implications in a business setting, We began by defining conflict of interest and identifying common examples such as self-dealing, favoritism towards family and friends, and outside employment that competes with the business goals. We then examined the legal implications and risk associated with conflict of interest, including potential breach of fiduciary duty, reputational damage, and the risk of legal penalties like fines or lawsuits, and in some cases jail term as well. Finally, we discussed strategies for managing and mitigating conflict of interest, and this included the importance of disclosure, establishing clear policies involving independent decision makers, and providing regular training to employees and stakeholders. Now, in a nutshell, when we proactively address conflict of interest, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, when you proactively address conflict of interest, your business maintains ethical standards. It maintains the highest of ethical standards. And that way you're protecting your reputation, you're protecting the reputation of your business, and you're ensuring long-term success. And with that, we've come to the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you connect with us by visiting our website at www.smegrowthlabafrica.com. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or send us an email to info@smegrowthlabafrica.com. We're also on social media at SME Growth Lab. Send us a message, share this video, and we hope to see you in the next lesson. Bye for now.